Date and time-based calculations are useful tools in helping businesses to plan for increased demands for products and demands on resources, such as staff and equipment. They also help businesses plan towards key dates or deadlines. Take the example of a building company contracted to build a new office block. The project manager needs to create schedules and plans for all stages of the building process. For planning purposes, they need to determine how many working days there are between the project's proposed start and end dates. By monitoring daily results over a specific time interval, businesses can identify dips and peaks in performance. For example, a management team might notice that during one period, there was a significant drop in sales. If the results are organized by date, they can identify the factors, internal or external, that might have caused this. Date and time calculations are also useful for tracking results and performance. Business transactions are usually recorded against dates and in some cases against time. Let's begin with serial numbers, the method Excel uses for tracking calendar days. In Excel, each date entry is formatted to appear as a calendar item. However, behind each date is a number that Excel uses to keep track of calendar days. This number is known as a serial number. Excel uses the system clock on your computer to track time, and it increments the serial number by 1 when a 24-hour period has elapsed. In this example, the two entries in A2 and B2 are formatted to display as dates. If the same entries in A4 and B4 are formatted as general, it is possible to display the serial numbers behind these dates. The later date has a larger serial number. The today formula can be used to always display the current date in a spreadsheet. Over at AdventureWorks, Jamie needs to display the current date in her spreadsheet. She can use the today function to generate this result. The syntax for this formula is an equal sign followed by the word today and parentheses. This creates a dynamic date display in a spreadsheet that updates every 24 hours. A similar function called now can also be used to display both the current date and time. The syntax for this function is an equal sign, the word now, followed by parentheses. When executed, this function displays the current date and time in your spreadsheet. This makes it more useful than the today function, which just shows the date. You can also use functions to extract the component elements of a date. These actions can be carried out using the month, day, and year functions. Each function extracts a specific component of the date, the month, day, or the year. You will learn more about these functions and the others you've just reviewed later in the course. Finally, there's also the date function. The date function is the opposite of month, day, and year. Either of these operations may be necessary to prepare date information for data analysis. You will learn more about these functions and the others you've just reviewed later in the course. Thankfully, with Excel, you can create dynamic date and time entries that update automatically. Over the next few minutes, you'll learn how to create dynamic time and date entries in a worksheet and separate dates into component parts. AdventureWorks are preparing a new advertising campaign which will launch in multiple countries. They need to use Excel to track progress toward key dates. The milestone dates for the project are contained in a worksheet called Regional Dates. The worksheet tracks information about the products that are part of the campaign alongside the campaign launch dates for each country. AdventureWorks needs to calculate how many project days are available for each campaign. Another calculation in the spreadsheet must show, on a rolling basis, how many days are left until each launch date. The development of this campaign will spread over 2 years. So, AdventureWorks also need to record the accounting period for the project launch date for each country. Let's help AdventureWorks to complete their spreadsheet using date and time formulas. Entries in column D and E are formatted as dates. You can select any cell in the range D5 to E19 and check the number format box on the home ribbon to confirm this. Remember that these dates are actually serial numbers, so you can switch the format on cells D5 and E5 to General. Access the Home tab and select General from the drop-down menu to display the serial numbers. Notice that the serial number for the date in E5 is larger than the one for the date in D5. Select Undo to restore the date format. Now you need to calculate the number of project days. You can complete this task using a simple subtraction formula. Select F5 to input your calculation. Begin the calculation with an equal sign. Then take the date in E5, the larger serial number, and subtract the date in D5, the smaller serial number. Press Enter to generate the result. There are 63 days assigned to the timeline for this first project. Note that because this calculation is a subtraction, Excel doesn't include the start date in cell D5 in its count. However, if required, you can ask Excel to include the start date by adding a +1 to the formula. The result in F5 remains static because the dates in D5 and E5 won't change. Now you need to work out the days to launch figure for cell G5. The formula for this figure takes the launch date in E5 and subtracts a current date figure in cell E1. The current date in E1 must also be created using a formula. If E1 always displays the current calendar date, then the formula in G5 recalculates daily to show the decreasing numbers of days to the launch date. You need to use the today function in your formula in E1 to make sure that the date updates every 24 hours to the current date. With the cursor in E1, type an equal sign, the word today, and an open parentheses. You might notice that the help prompt is empty. This is because the function doesn't require any arguments. There still needs to be parentheses after the function name, but no arguments should be included. Press Enter to produce a dynamic date result that updates every 24 hours. To show the days to launch figure in G5, the formula takes the campaign launch date in E5 and subtracts the current date in E1. The E1 cell reference must have $signs before the column initial and the row number. This is to make sure that the reference stays constant when the formula is copied. The today formula will now change the current date in cell E1 every day. The formula in G5 also recalculates daily. So, the days to launch figure reduces by 1 each day as the timeline gradually progresses. Your next task is to show the year for the campaign launch date. Excel recognizes 3 elements in a date: the month, the day, and the year. You can use the year function to identify and display the year element from a date in another cell. In other words, you can separate the date into its component parts so that you can focus on the year element. Type an equal sign, the word year, and an open parentheses in cell H5. A help prompt appears on screen and states serial number. This is because Excel interprets stored dates as serial numbers. Select E5, type a closing parentheses, and then press Enter to generate the result in H5. This campaign is set to launch in 2023. You've calculated the required campaign information for row 5. You can now copy these formulas down through the spreadsheet to calculate the remaining campaign dates. Use the autofill double-click shortcut on each formula to copy it down through the column to row 19 and complete the spreadsheet. You should now understand how Excel works with dates in calculations and be able to create some common dates and time tracking formulas. Thanks to your work in these formulas, AdventureWorks now have a clearer picture of how much time is available for each stage of this project. Well done.